Well, the House of Representatives tomorrow is going to vote on a $3 trillion, 1,800-page bill that nobody has read. Nobody. So what we're going to do is sit down and talk to Michael Burgess, congressman from Texas, about what's in the bill and what's not. So much to break down. It's unbelievable. We're going to have to wait and see this again before we can know what's in it.
We've been talking about the Michael Flynn case and the latest twists and turns. And Sean, it makes you wonder what General Flynn is actually thinking right now with all this new evidence. And just a couple days ago, it looked like this drawn out ordeal might be coming to an end. And now it looks like it might be starting up again. You know, you look at these documents from Grinnell talking about the unmasking, but why should someone be masked in the first place? Why are they masked?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what happens is when the U.S. government is looking at foreign agents and spies and people that are from outside this country, they can look right at them. But there's a law that protects U.S. citizens from being collected up, and it's called incidental collection. So they're spying on, say, an ambassador or some foreign agent that's coming into the United States, and they're talking to U.S. citizens. Well, you can't look at those U.S. citizens, so they mask their name. But what happens is people in the intelligence community and law enforcement sometimes want to know, okay, who is that person that they're talking to? Because I'm trying to put this puzzle together, so they unmask the name. Now, that's normal in the courts of intelligence gathering because these guys are trying to put all the puzzle pieces together to figure out why this foreigner that they're watching is doing certain things. But it's a little odd to have political people, especially this amount of political people, unmasking the name to kind of keep an eye on an American citizen. And in this case, it was Michael Flynn, and it was Michael Flynn in the lead up until to the days before the inauguration of Trump. So you saw, and Jim Jordan mentioned this, the investigation's being closed, and yet they're still being looked at who this guy is. And all these people from the White House are saying, unmask it, let's continue to get information on Flynn, when the FBI just days earlier had said, close the case, there's nothing there.
So obviously there's more to this story that needs to be told still. I think we asked Jim Jordan this, but why these people wanted to unmask is such a large number, 29. Should they come out and say, I mean, who forces these people to come out and say why they wanted to unmask?
I think as far as all of them, there's some of them that will or won't, but I think as far as the one in particular, Joe Biden, he should explain, why was I looking at that information just days before the inauguration? Number one. Number two is, did you have anything to do with getting this to the Washington Post, which is what Jim Jordan brought up? That was important. This pattern of information being unmasked and then suddenly it finding its way into the press seems way too often.
Yeah, it does. You know, something else that's really interesting to me is the judge in this case. We talked about him a little bit earlier, Emmett Sullivan. He was the judge already. So
right.
My question is, why all of a sudden is he unequipped in his own mind and needs a friend of the court to come help him out? I don't get it.
Neither do I. I don't understand. The whole role of a judge is to pass judgment, to adjudicate, the sentence or whatever. And yet this judge is saying that Flynn's made a motion, the Department of Justice agrees with it, and he's somehow incapable of ruling on it, so he's going to call in a retired judge? That just doesn't make any sense. He should either say, I agree with you, and frankly, in this case, as far as all the legal people who've weighed in, say this is a no-brainer. The Justice Department says the charges aren't good. Flynn says, hey, I made this deal because you were pressuring me. Now that I know what I know, I want to revoke my deal. The Justice Department says we agree with you. It was bogus. I don't see how this possibly can continue.
Yeah, and Jay Sekulow said this earlier in our show, but now he's acting as a special prosecutor in the case, not just the judge. And Alan Dershowitz has said this in an article that he wrote, that he is constitutionally out of line by doing that. It's very interesting.
Sometimes you watch those movies on TV where someone gets exonerated and they go, okay, so can I get out of jail right now today? And they go, no, we got to go through this motion. You're like, well, why? The evidence of the DNA now says that I'm exonerated. I feel like we're in a similar situation where the Department of Justice says, yeah, there isn't the evidence there. We know, knowing what we know now, we shouldn't prosecute you. Flynn says, yeah, I only agreed to plead guilty because you were pressuring my son, you were financially bleeding me, and you were going to throw the book at me if we had gone to trial. And now they're saying, yeah, but since you actually agreed to the deal that we offered you, now we're going to prosecute you on perjury. I mean, that is the definition of insanity.
I mean, it's a slippery slope and a terrible standard. Something else interesting we talked about today with Congressman Jordan was Comey's role in all of this.
Yeah.
Everything has been leaked so far.
That's actually a great point. I hadn't thought about it until he brought it up. But you find this common denominator going through all of these issues, right? The January 5th briefing at Trump Tower where Comey and the other intelligence agencies come up and brief President-elect Trump and those of us who were on the transition team that had a security clearance, they're walking through all this stuff. Then suddenly, within hours, it finds its way into BuzzFeed and CNN, right? Then suddenly, the unmasking stuff finds its way into the Washington Post. And all along, the common denominator is Comey over and over again. And when he comes out with this book and he says, yeah, guess what? I sent those FBI agents down. He seems to have known what he was doing from the beginning in terms of trying to entrap Michael Flynn and then find some way to use it against the president. But it was fascinating that the more information we get out, we've seemed to learn so much more. And the other thing that I find interesting is that these guys, Obama, Biden, none of them ever thought this was going to happen. And so the thing that's really interesting about the documents that have come out, especially from the House of Representatives, is the public pronouncements that people made about not knowing anything, and there was all this collusion. When they were under oath in the House of Representatives testifying, they said something very, very different. Clapper suddenly says, yeah, I saw no empirical evidence of collusion. Susan Rice, no evidence of collusion. Over and over again, under oath, they say one thing, but publicly, when they're going on their press tours, they say something completely different.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Their speculation isn't backed up by what they said under oath.
That's exactly right. All right, tomorrow, the House votes on a $3 trillion bill. It's 1,800 pages. Congressman Michael Burgess is about to join us. He's going to pry himself away from reading the bill to join us next.